G'day everyone, Blake here with another video, and it's been ages since I've been able to say that. It's really great to be back. As you can see, I'm fairly comfortable here in the new fish room, but we have had a little issue. So when I went to move this fish tank, what can happen, especially with older fish tanks, is after they're moved, they can sometimes spring a leak. It's a fish keeper's worst nightmare. So today, I'm going to show you how you can repair a leaking tank. So let's jump straight into the video. Before we get started, I thought I'd just let you know that I'm not a tradesman or a skilled professional at all. I have no plumbing experience or anything like that. Any sort of home hobbyist should be able to achieve this. It is a bit daunting at the start, I understand that, but just get in and do it. Maybe on a smaller aquarium which you can put outside to test it or something like that, and you'll soon get confidence at this skill. With that said, yeah, if you have a leaking tank, definitely don't put it out on the curb, on the nature strip, or give it away for free. And actually it can be a really great way to pick up cheap tanks, especially because other people who are scared of doing reseals might give them away to you. And after we watch this video, we'll be super confident that we can fix it up and it'll be good as new and watertight. So don't be scared of this process. It's really simple and straightforward, and hopefully we can demonstrate that to you today. Okay, so first of all, this here is the tank in question. It is a 75 gallon or 4 foot by 18 inch by 18 inch aquarium. I tried to put it over there on my 4 foot rack, which we'll talk about in a future video when I give you the tour. But as for today, I'm going to show you some of the silicone and why it might be leaking. So some things to look out for. If we take our other camera here. So here are some warning signs to look out for with old aquariums. You can see the silicone, where it was once a sort of clear color, is now quite opaque. It's starting to get quite brittle. It's easier to see on the back. And you can start to see areas where like algae is starting to get in and under, which means that water has gotten through the silicone layer to that point at that particular part of the tank. So in this one, the leak is just a very slow drip down here in the middle at the rear of where I had it. So I was lucky that I even spotted it, to be honest. So to prepare our tank for a reseal, you're gonna need a few things. First of all, we need a silicone gun, sealant gun, really cheap to pick up, a couple of bucks at your hardware store. Next thing you're gonna need is some silicone. This one here is from Bunnings in Australia. This is Selly's glass, but whatever silicone you wanna get, you have to look out for what it says right here in the middle, which is 100% silicone sealant right there. You don't want things like mold inhibitors because there is a bit of a risk to the health of your fish if your silicone does contain that and start leaching it into your aquarium. So this just goes in the sealant gun, nice and easy. You'll have to cut the top off and install this nozzle, but I'm sure you can figure out how to do that. Next up, we're gonna need some razor blades. I like to use brand new razor blades here, so you can see fresh box. We're gonna use a couple of those, probably at least 2. And then the last thing that we're gonna wanna do is dry this out really well. So for that, I'm gonna use this wet dry vac or shop vac, and we're gonna give it a good vacuum, getting all that dirt and water out of there. And then I'm gonna get some acetone, which is basically a type of alcohol, and rub all along the surfaces once I remove that old silicone, just to make it really moisture free. So we'll get the best adhesion from the silicone to the glass. Okay, so now we've given it a nice clean, and you can really see some of the damage on this silicone. I've never resealed this aquarium, so I'm assuming this silicone's about 7 to 10 years old, which is generally the lifespan that silicone in an aquarium will give you once you do it. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take a fresh razor blade here. I like this shape of razor blade because it's nice and wide, so you can grip it easily in your fingers, and then it's got a pointy end so you can get nice and deep into the corners. You can use like a handle for it if you like, but I just find the flexibility of holding it in my hand like that is a lot better. And I'm just gonna go ahead and remove all of the silicone from internal. Now, even if your leak is just along one side or along, the bottom, you can't just remove that section because the new silicone is not going to bond to the old silicone. So it's a good idea that no matter how many leaks you have, no matter how intense the leak is, you always reseal the entire inside of the aquarium. The other thing is you might want to cut out the piece of silicone holding the glass together, but I'm not going to do that in this case. It was really just a pinhole leak and I'm not worried about the structural integrity of the actual tank itself. So all I'm really going for is basically to refresh the silicone that's holding water inside the aquarium, nothing structural. So yeah, just going to go along each corner, pull out all the old silicone with the razor blade, and you'll see on the other camera that it's really straightforward and comes off pretty easy. Okay, so now that all this old silicone is removed, being careful to get up all of that old stubborn stuff as well. It's time to now give it another good vacuum out just to get any residual water or algae or anything gross out of the aquarium that's going to get in the way of our silicone bond. And we're going to give it a good clean up using some sort of alcohol. Generally acetone is used, put on a microfiber cloth, and you just rub that all along the seams that we're going to seal up with silicone. Now, if this is your favorite aquarium or a display tank inside the house, you want it to be really pretty, well, it's a good time to take some painter's tape and mark out or around the edges of what your silicone's going to be. For me personally, this is more of a functional tank, so I'm not really concerned about that. I'm just gonna sort of let the edges of the silicone be whatever they be. I'll try and do it in a straight line still, but I'm not gonna bother placing tape up to make it really extra crispy clean. So now I'm gonna go ahead and do another quick vac, another clean up of the edges, and then we'll start getting to our silicone. Okay, so now it's time to run our actual silicone. So we're just gonna open up this tube here. One tube will be plenty for this job, I think. We're gonna cut the nozzle here at a bit of an angle so that we can get a lot of control from placing this silicone here. So there's really no tricks to it. We're just gonna run this along each edge of the corners of the glass. As I said, if you've got the tape in place, you don't have to worry about being neat or anything. Just remove the tape before the silicone fully sets. But if you just kind of go in freestyle like I am, it's a good idea to have one glove on in case you need to use your finger to run it up. Or you can use tools and things like that, but I don't find that it's overall really helpful. And that's all it is to it really. Just get a good amount of silicone in the corner, and you sort of want a triangle of silicone really in the end, but let's get into it. Okay, so we're all done now sealing up the aquarium. You probably saw from that clip, all I did was just really run the silicone gun along all of the corners, and then I just put something over my hand on an old plastic bag, use that to run the line up each corner. Simple as that. Now you probably notice while you do that, if you haven't done it before, there's a very strong vinegary smell, and that is actually the uncured silicone. So for the next day or so, at least 24 hours, I really prefer 48, 72 hours, we're gonna probably smell that vinegary smell. And when it sort of dissipates, that's when you know that the silicone is cured. So after that, I always think it's a good idea to take the aquarium outside, fill it up, wait another 24 hours and make sure that you definitely sealed up those leaks. But that's pretty much as straightforward as it can get. Okay, so some pitfalls to avoid. When you're applying the silicone, make sure that after you've spread it, you can't see any air bubbles or gaps. Make sure that it's definitely pushed up against the glass on both sides, because that's really obviously going to create the seal. If you are cutting all the glass apart and starting from scratch, make sure that everything's really nice and squared up. And also make note when you are cutting it apart whether the side glass sits on top of the base or the base sits inside the side glasses, because they do differ sometimes from aquariums. Now in terms of these black bumper guards on the side, They don't really serve any purpose in terms of structural integrity. You can keep them if you like, you don't have to though. All they're really there to serve is make sure that you don't chip the corner off when you're walking past carrying something. So really simple, and if you lose some of those, you can actually find them at Bunnings and other hardware stores as well. If you don't have a wet dry vac, which I only just recently picked up, you can always just get some towels or leave the aquarium in the sun for a few days to dry out. Really no problem at all. Oh, the other thing with this silicone here is once you apply the silicone, don't leave it out in the sun, or if you've got old tanks that are sitting out in the sun and they develop leaks, that's because silicone isn't really stable in UV light. So that's what's happening, is the sunlight, the UV light from the sun is degrading the silicone. So make sure that if you can, you store aquariums under cover or away from natural sunlight, and that will really help to prolong the life of your silicone. So as you can see, it's a really simple process. I mean, obviously there are skills involved, and you'll be able to get it neater and neater and do it faster and faster the more experience you have. But as far as beginners go, if you've got an aquarium that you're not so worried about how it's going to look, then you can easily pick up some silicone, go ahead and seal it up, no problems at all. So hopefully you liked this video, hopefully you found it helpful, and other than that, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.